The man selling us the condo thought I couldn't understand him. My husband thought I couldn't understand him either. They stood 3 feet away from me, speaking freely in a language they assumed was safe, and I heard my husband say the words that would end our marriage. But I didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't let a single muscle in my face betray what I knew. I just smiled, nodded, and let them both believe I was too stupid to know they were planning to steal everything from me. That was 8 months ago. Now I'm standing in that same condo, but the name on the deed is mine. And my ex-husband? Oh, I am getting ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. Welcome to Tea Payback, where the tea is hot, the secrets are messy, and karma always finds her way home. Before I go on, just a quick reminder. I share new life stories every day. If you enjoy them, subscribing and liking the video would mean a lot to me. Now sit down, pour yourself a cup of tea. Let's continue. My name is Diana. I'm 41 years old, and for 16 years I was married to a man who made me disappear a little more each day. It started so slowly I didn't even notice. A comment here about how I didn't really understand finances. A laugh there when I mentioned wanting to take a pottery class. Little dismissals that felt like paper cuts, small enough to ignore, frequent enough to bleed you dry. By year 10, I'd stopped having opinions. By year 15, I'd stopped having a voice. I became wallpaper in my own life. Decorative, flat, easily ignored. But 8 months before everything changed, I did something my husband never knew about. I started learning Norwegian. It happened by accident, really. I was scrolling through my phone one night while he watched football in the living room, and an ad popped up. Free language courses. Learn at your own pace. I almost scrolled past it, but something made me stop. Maybe I was bored. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe some part of me that hadn't completely died yet was reaching for something, anything, that belonged only to me. I clicked the link. Started with basic phrases. Hey, tack. The words felt strange in my mouth, angular and unfamiliar. But I liked that strangeness. I liked how my brain had to work differently, had to build new pathways, had to wake up parts of itself that had been sleeping for years. Every night after that, I'd wait until my husband was absorbed in his shows or his phone, and I'd slip into the bedroom with my book. I used headphones, kept the volume low, practiced pronunciation in whispers. It became my secret garden, this language. The one thing in my life that he didn't control, didn't mock, didn't take from me. You might wonder why I hid it. Why not just tell him? 2 years earlier, I'd gotten excited about floral design classes. I'd seen a beautiful arrangement at a friend's house and thought, maybe I could learn that. Maybe I could create something beautiful with my hands. When I mentioned it to him, he didn't even look up from his tablet. That's not serious, Diana. You'll waste money and quit like you always do. Like I always do. As if I'd ever been allowed to finish anything. The words stung, but I pushed past them. I really think I'd enjoy it, I said. The classes are only once a week, and they're not that expensive. He finally looked at me then, and the expression on his face made me wish he hadn't. It was the look you give a child who's asked for something ridiculous. Diana, come on. You know how you are. You get excited about things and then lose interest. Remember the scrapbooking? The calligraphy set I bought you that's collecting dust? The running shoes you wore exactly twice? That was different. It's always different. And then it's always the same. You quit. He went back to his tablet. We don't have money to waste on your phases. I stood there for a moment, feeling something shrivel inside me. Then I walked away and never mentioned it again. 6 months after that, I tried to sign up for yoga. I'd been feeling stiff, tired, disconnected from my body. A friend had raved about her Tuesday evening class, how it helped with stress and flexibility. I thought maybe it would help me too. He cut me off before I even finished the sentence. We don't have money for your little hobbies. Do you know what utilities cost? What the mortgage costs? Maybe focus on keeping the house clean instead of wasting time on nonsense. The house was always clean. Spotless, actually. But I didn't argue. I just nodded and changed the subject. After that, I stopped trying, stopped asking, stopped wanting things out loud. But I didn't stop wanting them. I just learned to want them quietly, in the dark, where he couldn't see. The Norwegian lessons became my rebellion. Every conjugation I memorized, every grammar rule I mastered, every conversation I could finally understand. It was proof I wasn't as useless as he'd spent years convincing me I was. My online instructor told me I had a gift for it. Good pronunciation, natural rhythm, a feel for the language that usually took years to develop. Those words meant more to me than she could have known. Someone thought I was good at something. Someone thought I had potential. I practiced every single night, while he shouted at the television during games, while he scrolled through his phone, ignoring me at dinner, while he fell asleep on the couch and I sat 3 feet away, invisible. I filled notebooks with vocabulary, listened to Norwegian podcasts while I cooked, watched films with subtitles, then without, joined online conversation groups where I could practice with native speakers who had no idea I was a middle-aged accountant from the suburbs hiding in her bedroom to learn their language. By month 6, I could hold a basic conversation. By month 8, I could watch Norwegian films without subtitles and understand almost everything. I wrote vocabulary lists in the margins of my work notebooks, whispered phrases to myself in the shower, dreamed in 2 languages. And I told him nothing. Looking back, maybe some part of me already knew I'd need it. Maybe some survival instinct was preparing for a future I couldn't yet imagine. Or maybe I just needed one thing, one single thing, that was mine alone. Because everything else belonged to him. The decisions, the opinions, the future. Even my sense of self had somehow become his property to manage and critique. Our marriage had been dying for years, but we both pretended not to notice. We were good at pretending. We'd go to dinners with friends, and he'd rest his hand on my knee, and I'd smile, and we'd look like any other couple. Content. Stable. Fine. Behind closed doors, we barely spoke. He'd come home late from work, eat dinner in silence, and disappear into his office or the living room. I'd try to start conversations. How was your day? Did that meeting go well? I was thinking we could try that new restaurant this weekend. Monosyllable responses. Grunts. Non-committal nods. Then he'd retreat behind his phone or laptop or television, and I'd be left sitting at the table with cold food and colder silence. On weekends, he'd go fishing with friends or work in the garage. I'd clean the house, meal prep for the week, and watch the hours disappear into nothing. Sometimes I'd stand at the kitchen window and watch couples walking by outside, holding hands, laughing, actually looking at each other. And I'd wonder when we stopped being that. We didn't fight. Fighting requires caring enough to engage. We just existed in parallel, 2 strangers sharing an address. The biggest silence between us was about children. We'd tried for years. Tests, appointments, specialists who poked and prodded and asked invasive questions. Everything came back normal. Unexplained infertility, they called it. Just one of those things. Sometimes it happens. Keep trying. After 3 years of trying, we stopped talking about it. The topic became radioactive. Too painful to touch. Every pregnancy announcement from friends felt like a punch to the gut. Every baby shower invitation was torture. I'd see pregnant women at the grocery store and feel something crack inside me. I'd watch parents at the park pushing swings and teaching their toddlers to climb and wonder what I'd done wrong. What was broken in me that I couldn't give him the one thing he really wanted. Though toward the end, I wondered if maybe it was a blessing. At least there were no kids to damage. No small witnesses to the slow death of us. No one else who'd have to navigate the wreckage when it finally collapsed. Then one evening in February, he came into the bedroom without knocking. I barely had time to slam my Norwegian textbook shut and shove it under the pillow before he was standing there, phone in hand, eyes bright with something I hadn't seen in months. Excitement. Diana, look at this. He shoved the phone in my face. A real estate listing. Modern high-rise. 3 bedrooms. 1,200 square feet. The photos showed floor-to-ceiling windows, gleaming hardwood, a kitchen that belonged in a magazine. My heart did something strange in my chest. It looked perfect, like something out of a dream. The kind of place I'd walk past and think, people who live there must have their lives together. It's beautiful, I said, unable to hide the wonder in my voice. It's perfect, he corrected. Good neighborhood. The price is reasonable. And here's the thing. It's being sold by a foreigner. Some Norwegian guy going back to his country. We're seeing it tomorrow at 11. Norwegian. The word echoed in my head. A Norwegian seller. He would speak Norwegian. And my husband, who'd spent years bragging about his business trips to Oslo and Bergen, about how he'd picked up the language, about how he could negotiate deals in their native tongue. He would speak it too. An idea formed. Dangerous. Tempting. Impossible to ignore. Will you come? He asked, already turning away, assuming my answer. Of course, I said quietly. What I didn't say. This changes everything. What I didn't say. I'm going to hear every word you say when you think I can't understand. What I didn't say. I finally get to know who you really are when you think I'm not listening. He left the room, already making phone calls, and I sat on the bed with my textbook hidden under the pillow, my heart racing, my mind spinning with possibilities. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on my sliver of the bed while he snored beside me, taking up 3/4 of the mattress like he took up 3/4 of everything. And I thought about what I was planning to do. Deception. That's what it was. Deliberate, calculated deception. But then again, what was 16 years of dismissals and contempt? What was being erased day by day, treated like I was too simple to understand finances, too flighty to make decisions, too incompetent to have opinions? What was that, if not deception too? He'd spent years making me believe I was less than I was, making me doubt my own capabilities, making me feel grateful that he tolerated me at all. Maybe it was time to find out what he really believed when he thought I wasn't smart enough to catch him. I replayed every conversation we'd had about apartments, how he'd dismiss my opinions about layouts, how he'd wave off my concerns about neighborhoods, how he'd make decisions without consulting me, then present them as if I'd been part of the process all along. I think we should put an offer on the Riverside place, he'd say, when we'd never discussed the Riverside place at all. Don't you think the Lincoln Building is too far from your work? He'd ask, when I'd never said I liked the Lincoln Building to begin with. He had a way of rewriting history in real time, making me question my own memory, my own preferences, my own reality. And I'd let him, because I didn't trust myself anymore, because he'd convinced me that his judgment was better, his instincts sharper, his understanding of the world more accurate than mine. But tomorrow I'd hear him unfiltered. No translation, no softening, no reinterpretation, just the truth. We left early the next morning. The condo was across town in a new development, all glass and steel and carefully landscaped courtyards. In the car, he was focused, tense. He drove in silence except for occasional muttered complaints about traffic. Nobody in this city knows how to drive, he said, honking at someone who changed lanes. Look at this idiot. Absolutely clueless. I watched the city slide past and rehearsed in my head. Stay quiet. Look confused when they speak Norwegian. Smile politely. Nod. Be the version of yourself he expects. Pleasant, simple, a little slow to catch on. Be invisible. You're good at that. You've had 16 years of practice. You're quiet, he said at a red light, glancing at me. What's wrong? Already don't like the place. No, I'm just thinking, I said carefully. What if something goes wrong again? We've looked at so many places. This one's different. I checked everything. The building history, the documents, the seller's background. It's clean. Don't stress. He paused, then added, if anything, I'll translate everything for you. With foreigners, you have to be careful. They might try to pull something. Europeans think we're all suckers. I'll translate for you. The assumption that I needed him to interpret the world. That without him, I'd be lost. Helpless. Vulnerable. I clasped my hands in my lap and said nothing. We pulled up to a sleek building with a glass facade. Inside, the lobby was pristine. Marble floors, a concierge desk, abstract art on the walls. Everything smelled expensive. That particular scent of wealth that's hard to describe but impossible to miss. My husband looked around and nodded approvingly. Good investment, he muttered, more to himself than to me. Property values here are only going up. This whole area is being developed. In 5 years, this place will be worth twice what it is now. Investment, not home, not our future, not the place where we'd build a life together. Just numbers on a balance sheet. The elevator was fast and silent. I watched our reflection in the mirrored walls. Me pale, tense, hands gripping my purse like it was a life preserver. Him, confident, chin up, already mentally calculating square footage and resale value. We reached the 12th floor. Soft carpeting in the hallway. Tasteful art. Recessed lighting that made everything look warm and inviting. My heart was pounding so hard I thought he'd hear it. He found the right door and rang the bell. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. I took a breath, smoothed my face into something neutral and pleasant, and became invisible. The door opened. The man standing there was in his early 50s. Tall, fit, with silver-streaked hair and intelligent gray eyes. He wore a crisp button-down tucked into dark slacks. Professional, put together. The kind of person who probably had his life figured out. Eric Johansson, he said, extending his hand to my husband. His English was accented but clear. Then, almost immediately, he switched. He recognized something in my husband's posture, his confidence, and he began speaking Norwegian. My husband responded in kind, fluid and easy. Showing off, probably. Proving he could keep up. And just like that, I vanished. Eric turned to me, smiled politely, extended his hand. I shook it, gave a small, uncertain smile, and looked down. The universal body language of someone lost in a conversation they can't follow. My wife, Diana, my husband said in Norwegian, barely glancing at me. She doesn't speak the language, so I'll translate for her. She doesn't speak the language. Every muscle in my body wanted to react, to speak, to correct him, to prove I understood every single word. But I held still, kept my face blank, played the role I'd rehearsed. Please come in, Eric said, stepping aside. The apartment was stunning. Wide-open living room with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, offering a view of the park and the river in the distance. Gleaming floors, built-in bookshelves. Everything was tasteful and clean, the home of someone who cared about where they lived. Beautiful, I murmured in English, playing my part. My husband translated for Eric, but he added something extra. I caught every word. The wife is impressed, but we'll see if it's actually worth the price. The wife, not Diana, not by name, just the wife. Like I was an accessory, a thing that came with him. Eric smiled politely and began the tour. They walked through the space speaking Norwegian the entire time. Eric pointed out features with obvious pride. The renovated kitchen with custom cabinetry. The high ceilings with crown molding. The excellent building management that responded to issues within hours. The quiet, professional neighbors, doctors, professors, business owners. You'll never hear a sound through these walls, Eric said. The building has excellent sound insulation. I've lived here 3 years and never once been disturbed by neighbors. My husband translated in fragments, but I noticed immediately that he was changing things. When Eric mentioned the building management was exceptional and responsive, my husband told me, management is okay. Nothing special. When Eric said the neighbors were educated and considerate, my husband grunted. Neighbors are regular people. No problems so far. He was downplaying everything, making it sound less desirable. Why? To negotiate a better price? To make me less excited so I wouldn't push back if he decided against it? To maintain control over my expectations, so I'd be grateful for whatever he decided? I stayed quiet, examining the trim, the fixtures, the views. Nodding, smiling, absorbing every lie. We moved through the bedrooms. The master was spacious with an ensuite bathroom that had heated floors and a rain shower. The second bedroom was slightly smaller but still generous, with built-in closets and large windows. The third could be an office or a guest room. Perfect for a nursery someday, Eric said casually, gesturing to the third bedroom. I felt something twist in my chest. A nursery. The room we'd never fill. My husband said nothing. Didn't translate that comment. Just moved on to the next room like Eric hadn't spoken at all. We returned to the living room. Eric offered coffee. My husband accepted. I sat on the edge of the sofa, hands folded, trying to look as harmless as possible. Eric disappeared into the kitchen. I heard the espresso machine hum to life, the sound of cabinet doors opening and closing. My husband paced the room, examining books on the shelves, peering at framed photos on the walls. One photo caught his attention. Eric with a woman and two young adults, all smiling on what looked like a hiking trail. Family? My husband asked in Norwegian when Eric returned. Yes, my wife and our children. They're back in Norway. I've been here alone for 3 years. Eric's voice carried a note of sadness. The contract was good, the money was excellent, but being away from them, it's been difficult. My husband nodded but translated none of this to me. Just said, he's been here a while. Eric set down a tray, 3 small cups of dark coffee, and a plate of cookies that looked homemade. He sat in the chair across from us. I took a cup, nodded my thanks. The coffee was real, rich, nothing like the instant stuff we kept at home. Then Eric began talking again, and his tone shifted. More serious now. Personal. He explained that he'd lived here for 3 years. He loved the place. The light, the space, the neighborhood. But his work contract had ended, and his family was back in Norway. His wife. His grown children who'd stayed behind because their lives, their jobs, their friends were all there. They missed him. He missed them. Video calls weren't enough anymore. You reach a point, he said, staring into his coffee, where you realize that no amount of money is worth being away from the people you love. I thought I could do 5 years. I made it to 3. Now I just want to go home. There was real sadness in his voice. This wasn't just a transaction for him. This place meant something. Leaving meant something. My husband listened, nodded, then gave me the abbreviated version. He's leaving for work. Contract's up. That was it. No mention of the family. No mention of the loneliness. No mention of the emotional weight behind the decision. Just cold facts. I frowned internally but kept my face blank. Nodded like I understood. Then the conversation turned to business. Eric named his price. It was high but fair for the neighborhood and the condition of the place. I'd looked up comparable properties online. This was actually reasonable for what you got. My husband shook his head. Too expensive. He switched to Norwegian and started bargaining. The real estate market is unstable. Prices are dropping in this area. We have other options we're considering. This place needs work. The bathroom fixtures are outdated. The kitchen appliances will need replacing soon. None of that was true. The apartment was immaculate. But he lied smoothly, confidently. Eric pushed back gently. The apartment was in perfect condition. The neighborhood was highly desirable and only getting more so. Everything was move-in ready. He'd had other interested buyers, but wanted to sell to the right people. Back and forth. My husband dropped his offer 20% below asking. Eric refused. Too steep a discount. I understand you're trying to get a good deal, Eric said carefully, but I also need to be fair to myself. This apartment is worth what I'm asking. My husband leaned back, crossed his arms. We'll need to think about it then. Like I said, we have other options. I knew we didn't. The other places we'd seen had major issues. Too small. Bad locations. Needed significant renovations. This was the best option by far. But he was bluffing, playing hardball. 20 minutes of back and forth. Finally, they agreed on a compromise. Slightly below Eric's asking price, but not so low he'd take a real loss. They shook hands. My husband grinned. We agreed, he told me in English, looking pleased with himself. Got a good discount. See, you have to know how to talk to these people. Can't let them think you're desperate, or they'll take advantage. I smiled weakly. Then Eric said something that made every nerve in my body go rigid. Now, he said in Norwegian, his tone shifting to something more businesslike, we should discuss how to structure the deal, for simplicity and tax purposes. My husband leaned forward, interested. Transactions like this, Eric continued, they're easier if we minimize the paperwork. Less complicated with taxes in my country. I can recommend a notary who handles things smoothly and discreetly. What are you suggesting? My husband asked. Well, for example, Eric's tone was casual, like he was discussing the weather. You could put everything in one name. Just yours. It simplifies things with the bank, with the filings. You can always add your wife to the title later if you need to. I did it that way with my properties here. First, everything in my name. Then I redistributed shares later when it made sense. More convenient. More beneficial tax-wise. Fewer headaches. Time stopped. Put everything in one name. His name. Not ours. His. My hands went numb. The coffee cup trembled, and I had to set it down before I dropped it. My husband said nothing for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, thoughtfully. That does sound reasonable. Why complicate things unnecessarily? I'll think about it. Of course, it's your decision, Eric said. I'm just sharing my experience based on how things worked for me. Take your time. I can send you the notary's contact information if you're interested. Yes, send it. They moved on, talked about furniture. What would stay? The couch, the dining table, the bed. What Eric was taking, personal items, some books, artwork his wife had picked out. Discussion about whether the kitchen appliances were included or extra. Normal, polite conversation. And I sat there frozen, the coffee cup abandoned on the table, my hands clasped so tightly in my lap that my knuckles had gone white. He hadn't translated a word of that exchange. Not one word. He was planning to put the condo solely in his name, and he had no intention of telling me. I looked at him, at his relaxed posture, the easy smile on his face as he chatted with Eric about whether the refrigerator would stay or not. He looked so pleased with himself, so satisfied, and I felt something inside me crack wide open. For 40 more minutes they talked. Scheduling the independent appraiser, document review, move-out dates, closing timeline. My husband was engaged, professional, asking all the right questions. Eric was courteous and helpful, clearly wanting the sale to go through smoothly. I sat in silence, nodded when expected, sipped cold coffee that tasted like ash in my mouth. Inside, I was screaming. At one point, Eric glanced at me, really looked at me. There was something searching in his expression, like he could sense something was wrong, like he saw past the pleasant smile and the agreeable nods to the woman underneath who was quietly falling apart. Then he turned back to my husband and said very quietly, "She doesn't know that the documents will be in your name only, does she? Do I understand the situation correctly?" Everything stopped. My vision tunneled. My hearing went strange, like I was underwater. The room receded except for the two men sitting 3 feet away, discussing my future like I wasn't even there. My husband didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. He just laughed, actually laughed, and waved a hand dismissively. "What does it matter?" he said in Norwegian. His voice was light, casual, like he was discussing what to have for dinner. "She doesn't understand anyway. And honestly, it's none of her business. I earn the money. I pay for everything. I make the decisions. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. So it's fine. Don't worry about it. None of her business. She doesn't understand anyway. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. 16 years of marriage. 16 years of cooking his meals, doing his laundry, managing his household, supporting his career, tolerating his moods, shrinking myself smaller and smaller to fit into the space he allowed me. And this was what he really thought of me. Not a partner, not an equal, not even really a person, just something that existed in his life. Something that cost money and took up space and occasionally needed managing. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just sat there, staring at nothing, while my entire world rearranged itself into something unrecognizable. Eric nodded slowly, but something changed in his expression. Discomfort, maybe even disapproval. His mouth pressed into a thin line, but he said nothing, just turned back to his laptop and started pulling up documents. The meeting wrapped up soon after. Numbers exchanged. Email addresses swapped. Plans made to reconnect in a few days to coordinate with the notary. Eric walked us to the door, shook my husband's hand, nodded at me with that same polite smile, but now there was something else in his eyes when he looked at me. Pity, maybe, or sadness. We left. In the elevator, my husband hummed under his breath, pleased, proud of himself, completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just destroyed everything. Outside, the sun was bright. People walked their dogs. Kids played on the grass. A couple sat on a bench sharing a sandwich, laughing about something. Everything looked so normal. I walked beside my husband and felt like I was moving through a dream, or a nightmare. The kind where you try to scream, but no sound comes out. We got in the car. He started the engine, turned on some pop station playing upbeat music. Great place, right? He said, backing out of the spot with one hand on the wheel. Told you we'd find something good. That Norwegian guy was easy to work with. Barely had to push him on the price. I did well, didn't I? I looked out the window. My voice, when I spoke, came out flat. Empty. Like all the feeling had been scooped out of me. Yes. Nice apartment. See. In a week we'll sign the preliminary agreement, put down the deposit, and we're set. Another month or two and we can move in. You can start thinking about how you want to decorate. Though honestly, it looks perfect as is. Maybe just some new curtains or something. Uh-huh. He didn't notice. Kept talking about square footage and property values, and how lucky we were to find something in such a desirable neighborhood. I replayed those words in my head on a loop. None of her business. She doesn't understand anyway. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. Every repetition was a knife sliding between my ribs. We got home. He immediately collapsed on the couch and turned on the TV. Some talk show with a laugh track. He settled in like he planned to stay there all afternoon. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, drank it in one long swallow. My hands were shaking so badly that water slopped over the rim and ran down my wrist. I looked out the window at the dingy courtyard of our current building. Gray concrete. A rusted playground no kids ever used. Overflowing dumpsters. This had been my view for 16 years. And I'd been about to trade it for another prison. A nicer one, with better windows and updated appliances. But still a prison. One where my name wouldn't even be on the deed. What now? What could I do? If I confronted him, he'd have an explanation ready. Taxes. Paperwork. Simplification. It's just easier this way. We'll add you later. Don't worry about it. You're overreacting. He'd gaslight me. Make me doubt what I heard. Make me feel crazy for being upset. And part of me, the part that had been trained for 16 years to doubt myself, would want to believe him, because believing was easier than facing the truth. But I'd heard the truth. Heard it in his own words, in his own voice, when he thought I couldn't understand. I wasn't his partner. I was his dependent, his burden, someone who just lived and enjoyed what he provided. I set the glass in the sink and gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. No, no more. I went back to the living room. He was laughing at something on TV, completely at ease. We need to talk, I said from the doorway. He didn't look away from the screen. Now, something in my voice made him turn his head. His eyebrows rose. Why are you worked up? What happened? Whose name are you putting on the deed? He blinked, clearly not expecting the question. Both of ours. Obviously. Why? The lie came so easily. He didn't even have to think about it. Eric suggested you put it in one name. In your name. And you agreed. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession. confusion, realization, shock. How did you? He stopped. Stared at me. You were eavesdropping? I heard everything. But you don't. He trailed off. I watched understanding dawn like the sun coming up over something ugly. You speak Norwegian. I didn't answer. Just stood there, waiting. He got up slowly from the couch. Moved toward me. Stopped a few feet away. How long? How long have you known the language? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. How long have you been lying to me? Lying. I felt something hot and sharp rising in my chest. You were planning to steal our home from me, and I'm the liar? I wasn't stealing anything. His voice rose. Defensive. Aggressive. I was simplifying the process. Then I would have added you to the title later. This is standard practice. Then why didn't you tell me? Because you don't understand these things. Or maybe because you never intended to add me at all. Silence crashed between us like a wave. This is insane, he finally said. He ran a hand through his hair. Paced away from me, then back. I've provided for you for 16 years. Worked myself to the bone, so you could have everything you wanted. And now you're accusing me of what? Scheming. I heard what you said to Eric. My voice was shaking now, but I forced the words out. Word for word. None of her business. She doesn't understand anyway. She just lives and enjoys what I provide. His face went pale, then red. Blotchy. I didn't mean it like that, he said, but the words came out weak. Unconvincing. Then how did you mean it? We were talking, and he asked, and he stopped. Started again. It slipped out. I was frustrated. You're taking this out of context. There's no context that makes those words okay. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. His voice climbed higher. Louder. I work 60 hours a week, so we can have a decent life. So you can have a cushy job that barely pays for groceries and spend your evenings doing God knows what. Apparently learning languages behind my back for some reason. I learned it because you made me feel worthless. The words exploded out of me. Louder than I intended. Every time I wanted to try something, you laughed at me. Made me feel stupid. Told me I'd fail. I was being realistic. You were being cruel. We stood there, both breathing hard. His fists were clenched. For a moment, I was actually afraid. Afraid he'd grab me. Push me. Hit me. But he just stood there, trembling with rage, looking at me like I was a stranger. Then something shifted in his expression. The anger drained away, replaced by something uglier. Condescension. Listen, he said slowly, like he was explaining something simple to a child. You heard a conversation and misunderstood it. I wanted to streamline the paperwork. That's all. It's common practice in real estate. And since you apparently don't trust me, fine. We'll put both names on the deed. Happy now. I don't believe you. Then what do you want from me? I want to know why you've spent 16 years treating me like I'm invisible. I haven't. Yes, you have. My voice cracked. The tears I'd been holding back started to break through. I've cooked every meal, cleaned every mess, supported every dream you had, and you've made me feel like I'm nothing, like I don't matter, like my only purpose is to exist quietly in the background and be grateful for whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. That's not fair, isn't it? Name one thing I wanted that you supported. One hobby, one interest, one dream. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. You can't, can you? I said quietly. I'm tired of this. He turned away, walked to the window, stared out at the street. I explained already. It slipped out. Eric brought it up himself. I answered without thinking. Without thinking? I smiled, but there was no humor in it. Only bitterness. When a person speaks without thinking, they speak the truth. What they actually believe. And you showed me exactly what you think of me. He was silent for a long moment. Then, without turning around. How long are we going to go on about this? I don't know. How long have you been planning to steal from me? I wasn't. He spun around, face red again. God, you're impossible. You know that. I try to do something nice, find us a better place to live, and you twist it into some conspiracy. You literally told Eric it was none of my business. In the context of simplifying paperwork. No, in the context of me not understanding anything. Of me just existing to enjoy what you provide. His jaw worked. He looked like he wanted to say something, then thought better of it. Finally, what do you want from me, Diana? An apology. Fine. I'm sorry. I said something stupid. I didn't mean it. Can we move on now? No. The word hung in the air between us. No, he repeated. What does that mean? It means I can't do this anymore. I can't pretend we're okay when we're not. I can't act like 16 years of dismissal and contempt can be fixed with, I'm sorry I said something stupid. So what then? Something dangerous crept into his voice. You want to cancel the apartment? Walk away from the best option we've seen in months. Yes, that's idiotic. That's my decision. Your decision? He laughed, but it was harsh. Mean. With what money? You can barely afford your car payment on your salary. You think you can just go out and buy a place on your own. And there it was. The real weapon. The one he'd been holding in reserve. Financial control. The reminder that I needed him. That without him, I'd have nothing. It had worked for 16 years. The threat, spoken or unspoken, that I couldn't survive without him. That I should be grateful he tolerated me at all. But something had changed. Those words in Eric's apartment had broken something in me. Or maybe they'd finally freed something that had been locked away for too long. Maybe I can't, I said quietly. Maybe you're right. Maybe I'll end up in a studio apartment with 3 roommates, eating ramen and taking the bus everywhere. But at least it'll be mine. At least I won't have to ask permission to exist. His face went through several emotions. Disbelief. Anger. Something that might have been fear. You're not serious. I am. Diana, come on. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Let's just. I want a divorce. The words came out before I'd even fully decided to say them. But once they were out there, hanging in the air between us, I realized they were true. I wanted a divorce. I'd wanted it for years, probably. I just hadn't had the courage to admit it. He stood frozen, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. You don't mean that, he finally said. I do. Over this? Over one apartment viewing. Over 16 years of being treated like I don't matter. I never. You did. Every day. In 1,000 small ways. And I let you because I thought that's what marriage was. Compromise. Sacrifice. Making yourself smaller so the other person had room to grow. But that's not marriage. That's disappearing. He shook his head slowly. You're overreacting. You're emotional right now. We can talk about this when you've calmed down. Don't do that. Don't tell me I'm emotional. Don't dismiss how I feel. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Fine. His voice exploded. You want to leave? Leave. See how far you get on your own. See how long it takes before you realize you made a mistake. Because I guarantee you, you'll be back. Begging me to take you back. And you know what? I might not. The threat was supposed to scare me. Break me down. Make me reconsider. Instead, it made me feel strangely calm. Okay, I said simply. Okay. He looked thrown. That's it? Just okay. Yes. I'll call a lawyer tomorrow. We'll divide the assets fairly. Sell this place, or you can buy me out. Whatever makes sense. But I'm done. I turned and walked to the bedroom. Closed the door. Locked it. On the other side, I heard him pacing, muttering to himself. Then his phone rang, and he answered in a low voice. Probably calling his friend Jamal. Telling his version of events. How his crazy wife had lost her mind over nothing. I sat on the bed and pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but there was something else now too. Clarity. Purpose. The feeling of having finally made a decision after years of letting decisions be made for me. I pulled up Eric's contact information from the real estate listing. Hesitated for just a moment. Then typed out a message in Norwegian. Eric, this is Diana. I'm sorry for the deception today. I do speak Norwegian. Have been learning for 8 months. I heard everything you and my husband discussed. I won't be moving forward with the purchase as his wife. But I wanted to ask, would you consider selling the apartment to me? Just me. I know I need time to arrange financing. I'll be filing for divorce and will need to divide assets first. But if you're willing to wait, I'd like to try. I understand if that's not possible. Thank you for your time. Diana. I stared at the message for a long time before hitting send. Then I did. The response came faster than I expected. Maybe 10 minutes. Diana, I had a feeling you understood more than you were letting on. I'm so sorry for my part in that conversation. I should have refused your husband's suggestion immediately. As for your question, yes, I'll wait. My daughter went through something similar with her ex-husband. I know how hard this is. Take the time you need. The apartment will be here. Call me when you're ready to discuss details. You're braver than you think. Eric. I read the message 3 times. Then I set the phone down and let myself cry. But this time the tears felt different. Not defeated. Not hopeless. Angry. Cleansing. The beginning of something instead of the end. In the living room, I heard the front door open and close. My husband leaving. Going to Jamal's, probably. To drink beer and complain about his unreasonable wife who didn't appreciate everything he did for her. And I sat in the bedroom, our bedroom that would soon just be his bedroom, and started making a list. Things I needed to do. Steps to take. A plan. Call divorce lawyer. Get consultation. Understand my rights. Research mortgage options. See what I qualify for a loan. Update resume. Look for higher paying positions. Calculate finances. Figure out what I'd get from selling or dividing this condo. Contact Eric. Discuss timeline, price, terms. The list grew. Each item felt like a small act of rebellion. A declaration that I was taking control of my own life for the first time in 16 years. I worked on that list until after midnight. When I finally lay down to sleep, I was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, scared of what came next. But I was also free. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face the office. Couldn't pretend everything was normal. Instead, I started making calls. First, the divorce lawyer Eric had mentioned. Patricia Chun. She had an opening that afternoon, and I took it. Her office was in a modest building downtown. Nothing flashy. Patricia herself was maybe 45, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense air. She listened to my story without interruption. Took notes. Asked clarifying questions. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "You'll be fine," she said. "Better than fine, actually. You have steady employment, clean credit, and a legitimate claim to half of your marital assets. Your husband might try to fight it. They usually do. But the law is clear. Community property is community property. Doesn't matter who earned what. You're entitled to half. How long will it take? 4 months if he cooperates. 6 or more if he drags his feet. But from what you've described, I don't think he'll fight too hard. Men like him usually don't. They're too proud to look like they're clinging to a failed marriage." She walked me through the process. Filing. Disclosures. Asset division. What to expect. What documents I'd need. How much it would cost. It was a lot, but it was also doable. "One more thing," Patricia said as I was gathering my things to leave. "You're sure about this? Because once we file, it's hard to walk it back. Emotions run high. He might try to apologize, promise to change. You need to be prepared for that." "I'm sure," I said. And I was. Over the next week, my husband tried everything. First came the apologies. He showed up at the apartment with flowers. Said he'd been thinking about what I said. That he was sorry. That he wanted to work on things. I told him to leave. Then came the bargaining. He'd put both our names on the apartment. We'd go to marriage counseling. He'd be better. Just give him a chance. I told him it was too late. Then came the anger. The accusations. I was throwing away 16 years over nothing. I was being irrational. Emotional. I'd regret this. I stopped answering his calls. Finally came acceptance. or something like it. He agreed to mediation, to dividing assets fairly, to letting me go. Maybe he was tired too. Maybe he'd been as unhappy as I was, just too stubborn or scared to admit it. Or maybe he just realized I wasn't backing down. During those weeks, I threw myself into planning my future. I applied to 6 different positions, got 3 interviews, accepted an offer from an international consulting firm that managed accounts across Scandinavia. They needed someone who could handle financial reports in Norwegian and English. The pay was 42% higher than my current salary. When the hiring manager asked how I'd learned Norwegian, I told her the truth. Independently. 8 months. I wanted to challenge myself. She actually laughed. That's exactly the kind of initiative we value here. When can you start? I gave notice at my old job. My boss was surprised but understanding. You've been here 16 years, she said. Maybe it's time for something new. Yes, I thought. Maybe it is. I met with mortgage brokers. Showed them my employment offer, my projected income, my credit history. They ran the numbers. With a 20% down payment from my half of the current condo, I could afford Eric's apartment. The monthly payment would be tight at first, but manageable. And as I proved myself at the new job, I could refinance or pay down principal faster. It was possible. Scary, but possible. Every evening, I worked on my Norwegian. Studied financial terminology I'd need for the new job. Practiced conversations. Built my confidence. Eric checked in regularly. How's it going? He'd ask, and I'd update him. You're doing great, he'd say. I'm proud of you. Those words meant more than he could know, because no one had said them to me in a very long time. The divorce moved forward. Slowly. Painfully. But forward. We divided everything. Furniture, dishes, books. I took only what I needed. Let him have the rest. I didn't want anything that would remind me of who I'd been in this marriage. The condo was appraised. My husband agreed to buy me out at fair market value. The money would be transferred once the divorce was final. 4 months after that terrible day in Eric's apartment, the divorce was finalized. I walked out of the courthouse with papers in hand and a strange lightness in my chest. I was single, alone, starting over at 41. And I was terrified, but I was also free. That evening, I called Eric. It's done, I said in Norwegian. The divorce is final. I have the money from the condo. I'm ready to move forward if you're still willing to sell to me. I'm willing, he said. Let's meet tomorrow and discuss the details. We met at a coffee shop. Went over numbers, timelines, terms. Eric had kept the price exactly where we'd agreed. No changes. No surprises. I could have sold it a dozen times in the last 4 months, he admitted. Had several offers, some even higher than asking. But I told them I'd already committed to someone else. Why? I asked. You didn't owe me anything. He smiled. Maybe not. But my daughter, she would have wanted me to help you. And honestly, so did I. What your husband said that day, how he talked about you, it bothered me. A lot. I'm glad you got away from him. We signed a preliminary agreement. I submitted my mortgage application. The bank approved it within a week. 2 weeks later, I sat in a lawyer's office and signed my name on more documents than I could count. Deed transfer, mortgage papers, insurance forms, property disclosures. And when it was done, the lawyer handed me an envelope. Congratulations, she said. You're a homeowner. I walked out of that office with keys in my hand and tears streaming down my face. The apartment my ex-husband had wanted to steal from me was mine. Legally, officially, undeniably mine. I drove straight there. Let myself in. Walked through the rooms that were now my rooms. Looked out the windows at the view that was now my view. Eric had left everything as promised. The furniture, the dishes, even fresh flowers on the kitchen counter with a note. Welcome home. Eric. I stood in the living room, my living room, and tried to process what I'd done. For months ago, I'd been a housewife in a dying marriage, convinced I couldn't survive on my own. Now I owned a condo in a building I couldn't have afforded a year ago. I had a career that challenged and fulfilled me. I had proof that I was capable of far more than anyone, including myself, had believed. I poured myself a glass of wine from a bottle Eric had left, walked out onto the balcony, watched the sun set over the park, and for the first time in 16 years, I felt like myself. The following weeks were a blur of settling in, unpacking boxes, buying groceries for my own kitchen, choosing paint colors for the accent wall in the bedroom. Small decisions that were entirely mine to make. Work was intense but rewarding. My Norwegian was better than I'd realized. I handled client calls, translated financial documents, caught errors in reports that others had missed. My boss was impressed. My colleagues respected me. I started going to a conversation group for Norwegian speakers. Met people who shared my interest in the language and culture. Made friends who knew nothing about my marriage or my divorce or the person I used to be. And then one evening, a man approached me after class. Thomas, about my age, with warm eyes and an easy smile. Your pronunciation is excellent, he said. How long have you been studying? About a year, I said. You? All my life. I'm Norwegian. Moved here for work 5 years ago. We ended up talking for an hour after class ended. About language, work, Oslo versus Bergen, the best places for authentic Nordic food in the city. Would you want to get coffee sometime? He asked as we were leaving. I mean, if you're interested. No pressure. I hesitated. The idea of dating felt impossible. I'd just gotten divorced. I was still figuring out who I was as a single person. But then I thought, why not? What's the worst that could happen? I'd like that, I said. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a walk in the park. Walks turned into weekend trips to art museums and concerts and farmers' markets. Thomas was kind, patient. He listened when I talked, asked questions, and actually cared about the answers. Treated me like an equal partner in every decision, from where to eat to what movie to watch. Why did your marriage end? He asked one evening, about 2 months into dating. We were sitting on my balcony, watching the city lights come on. If you don't mind me asking. I told him. Not everything, but enough. The dismissals, the control, the overheard conversation, the decision to leave. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, he was an idiot. I laughed. That's it. That's your analysis. What else is there to say? He had you, and he didn't appreciate you. That makes him an idiot. 6 months after we started dating, Thomas brought up something unexpected. I've been thinking, he said. We were cooking dinner together in my kitchen in my apartment. What if you came to Norway with me this summer? Just for 2 weeks. I want to show you where I'm from. Introduce you to my family. That's a big step, I said carefully. I know, but I think we're ready. If you want it, that is. No pressure. I thought about it. A year ago, I would have been terrified, would have needed permission, would have doubted whether I deserved something like that. Now, yes, I said. I'd love to. We went to Norway that summer. Met his family, warm, welcoming people who treated me like I'd always been part of their lives. Explored Bergen and Oslo and tiny coastal villages. Practiced my Norwegian with native speakers who were patient and encouraging. On our last night, we stood on a fjord watching the midnight sun, and Thomas said, You seem happy. Really happy. I am, I said. And I meant it. A year after the divorce, I got a promotion at work. More responsibility, more pay, more respect. My boss called me into her office and said, You've exceeded every expectation we had. We'd like to make you a senior financial analyst. Are you interested? Yes, I said without hesitation. That evening, I celebrated by signing up for the pottery class I'd wanted to take all those years ago. The one my ex-husband had laughed at. I was terrible at pottery. My bowls were lopsided. My vases looked drunk. My mugs couldn't hold water without leaking. But I loved every minute of it. The feel of clay in my hands. The meditative rhythm of the wheel. The complete lack of pressure to be perfect. You're getting better, my instructor said after a few weeks. This bowl is almost level. Almost, I said, laughing. Almost is progress. Yes, I thought. It is. I kept going to the class. Kept making terrible bowls and wonky vases. Kept failing and trying again and not caring whether I was good at it because I was doing it for me. Because I wanted to. Because I could. Thomas came to one of my classes. Watched me work for a while, then tried the wheel himself. His pot collapsed immediately into a muddy heap. This is harder than it looks, he said, laughing. That's what makes it fun, I said. 2 years after the divorce, I ran into my ex-husband at a coffee shop downtown. I was with Thomas, both of us laughing about something I can't even remember now. We were happy, comfortable, easy together. I saw my ex-husband first. He was with a woman, young, pretty, dressed expensively. She was scrolling through her phone while he talked. She looked bored. He looked up, saw me, froze. For just a second, everything stopped. Our eyes met across the coffee shop, and I saw it all pass through his face. Recognition. Shock. Something that might have been regret. He looked at Thomas, at my hand in Thomas's hand, at the way we stood together, comfortable and close. Then he looked back at me, and I saw the question in his eyes. Who are you? Because I wasn't the woman he'd been married to. That woman had been small and quiet and afraid. This woman stood tall, smiled easily, belonged to herself. I nodded once, a small acknowledgement. Then Thomas and I walked past, and I didn't look back. Outside, Thomas said, "Was that him?" "Yeah. You okay?" "I'm perfect," I said. And I was. Because here's what I'd learned in those 2 years. The person who hurt you doesn't get to define your future. The person who made you feel small doesn't get to determine how big you can become. My ex-husband spent 16 years convincing me I was incapable, dependent, lucky to have him. And for 16 years, I believed it. But then I heard 3 words, none of her business, and everything changed. Those words were supposed to be the final proof of my irrelevance, the confirmation that I didn't matter in my own life. Instead, they became the spark that burned down everything I'd been told to believe about myself. I learned Norwegian in secret, not because I planned to use it for revenge, but because I needed something that was mine, something he couldn't touch or diminish or take away. And when the moment came, when I finally heard the truth about what he really thought of me, that secret knowledge saved me, because I understood, not just the words, but the reality behind them, the contempt, the control, the complete disregard for my humanity. And understanding gave me power, the power to leave, to rebuild, to become someone I'd never imagined I could be. The apartment my ex-husband wanted to steal from me became my launching pad, the place where I learned to trust myself again, to make decisions without second-guessing, to believe that I deserved good things. Eric sold me that apartment for the price we'd agreed on. Never wavered. Never tried to get more money despite having other offers. Because he'd seen what I couldn't see yet, that I was worth investing in. His daughter had escaped a similar situation. He wanted to help me do the same. And he did. That apartment wasn't just shelter. It was proof. Concrete evidence that I could take care of myself, that I didn't need someone else to translate the world for me or make decisions on my behalf or grant me permission to exist. Now, 2 years later, I stand in my living room, the same room where Eric and my ex-husband discuss my future like I wasn't even there, and I marvel at how much has changed. The furniture is different now. I've replaced almost everything, chosen pieces that I love, that reflect who I am. The walls are painted in colors I picked out. The art is mine. The books on the shelves are ones I want to read. Everything in this space is a choice I made for myself. Thomas is here most weekends. We've talked about him moving in officially, but we're taking our time, learning from past mistakes, making sure we're building something healthy and equal. He treats me like a partner, asks my opinion on everything from what to cook for dinner to whether we should take that trip to Iceland, values my thoughts, respects my boundaries, celebrates my successes without feeling threatened by them. It's so different from what I had before that sometimes I still can't quite believe it's real. Last month, my ex-husband got married to that young woman I saw him with at the coffee shop. I heard about it through mutual acquaintances. Apparently it was a big, expensive wedding. Very flashy. I felt nothing when I heard the news. No jealousy, no regret, no lingering pain. Just a vague curiosity about whether she knows what she's gotten into. Whether he's learned anything. Whether he treats her better than he treated me. I hope he does. I hope he's changed. I hope she's happy. But mostly, I just don't think about him anymore. Because my life isn't about him. It isn't defined by what he did or didn't do, what he said or didn't say. It isn't measured against the 16 years I spent shrinking myself to fit into his idea of what a wife should be. My life is mine now. Fully, completely, undeniably mine. I wake up every morning in the apartment he wanted. The one he tried to put solely in his name, so I'd be dependent on him forever. I work at a job that challenges me and pays me well. A job I got because I taught myself a language he didn't know I was learning. I have friends who value me. A partner who respects me. Hobbies that bring me joy even though I'm terrible at them. I have proof, daily concrete proof, that I'm capable of far more than anyone ever gave me credit for, including myself. And every single day, I remember, the worst thing someone can do to you isn't cruelty. It's making you believe you're less than you are, convincing you that you're small and incapable and lucky just to be tolerated. My ex-husband spent 16 years doing exactly that, and I spent 16 years believing him. But then I learned a new language, and in learning it, I learned something even more important. I could learn. I could grow. I could accomplish things I never thought possible. I could save myself. The apartment he planned to use to trap me became the symbol of my freedom. The language he didn't know I spoke became the key that unlocked my cage. And the words he said, none of her business, she doesn't understand, she just lives and enjoys what I provide, became the fuel that powered my transformation. Those words were meant to diminish me, to reduce me to nothing. Instead, they set me free. Because once I heard them, I couldn't unhear them. Couldn't pretend anymore. Couldn't convince myself that things would get better, or that I was overreacting, or that I should just be grateful for what I had. I heard the truth, and the truth destroyed my marriage. But it saved my life. So here's to every person who's ever been told they're not enough. Not smart enough. Not strong enough. Not capable enough to survive on their own. Here's to learning things in secret. To planning escapes no one sees coming. To trusting yourself when everyone else has stopped believing in you. Here's to the moment you stop performing the role someone else wrote for you and start living the story you were always meant to tell. My name is Diana. I'm 43 years old, and I'm standing in the living room of the apartment that was supposed to be my prison. Instead, it became the foundation for everything I've built since. The man who tried to steal it from me? He's remarried now, living his life. Probably convinced he dodged a bullet when I left. Good. Let him think that. Because I know the truth. I'm not the one who lost something precious. He is. He had a partner who would have stood by him through anything. Who would have loved him fiercely if he'd let her. Who would have built a beautiful life with him if he'd seen her as an equal instead of an inconvenience. But he couldn't. He saw me as something to manage. Something that cost money and took up space and occasionally needed to be put in its place. And now I'm here, in this apartment, living this life, becoming this person. And he's wherever he is, probably still trying to control whatever surround him. Still convinced he knows best. Still making someone else feel small so he can feel big. I don't hate him. I don't wish him ill. I just don't think about him. Because my story isn't about revenge. It's not about punishing him or proving him wrong or rubbing his face in my success. My story is about reclamation. About taking back the parts of myself I'd lost or given away. About building a life that's authentically, undeniably, beautifully mine. The apartment he wanted is mine now. The deed has my name on it. Just mine. And every day I wake up here, I remember. You're stronger than anyone told you. Braver than you believed. capable of so much more than you imagined. All you have to do is stop waiting for permission to become who you already are. The man who underestimated me learned that lesson too late. But I learned it just in time. And that makes all the difference.